Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to tonight's webinar featuring Rebecca Guinn and Chris Fitzgerald. My name is Kristen Hassen and I'm the Director of American Pets Live, overseeing the Human Animal Support Services Project. And we are so excited to have these two rock stars here tonight to talk about all of the good stuff and all of the really hard stuff of the past year and a half in animal welfare. So I have a couple of housekeeping items, but before I get to those, I want to say welcome to Chris and Rebecca.
Thank you, Kristen. It's great to be here.
This is an hour and it's meant to be really interactive. So we want to hear from you, your questions, your comments. You can use the Q&A feature as well as the chat feature, and we'll be monitoring both of those. So we'll be stopping and pausing to get your comments and questions as we go. Tonight is a little bit different. It's going to be really focused on what it means to be doing the work of animal welfare in this time. So without further ado, let's get to it. I guess I want to start, we asked you both here specifically because you are two leaders that have dealt with tremendous challenges, yet you have experienced amazing triumphs as well. And so that's really the purpose of the webinar tonight. But I was hoping that you could each take a few minutes just to talk a little bit about how the heck you got to where you are today, and tell us a little bit about your history and the organization that you work for today.
Go ahead, Chris.
Certainly. So my background is in wildlife biology. I thought I was gonna change the world through wildlife conservation and habitat protection and kind of cool, glamorous stuff like that. And I ended up getting kind of typecast as a small mammal biologist doing kind of esoteric research focused on land management practices, and it really turned me off. So I came to Rochester, which is my hometown, to regroup. And while I was here, the city assumed control of animal services. So they were hiring a new staff. And I thought, well, here's an opportunity to work with animals, companion animals, but animals in my hometown. And, this will be good for experience, resume builder, my 5-year plan. So 21 years later, I'm still here. It's like the island of career choices, but stayed because of the work and because of wanting to make a difference in engaging with my team and my community. So I feel like Kristen, I'm still working on changing the world, but doing it by celebrating and supporting the human-animal bond.
Thanks, Chris.
Completely different story. I was a criminal defense attorney in my last lifetime, and I was going to save the world by defending our constitutional rights, or the constitutional rights of what ended up being white-collar criminals. That was my specialty. So kind of a odd specialty, but I had an experience at a county animal shelter. I had pets, probably more than most, but not anything that would surprise the people on this call. And I loved animals, but I had never even volunteered. And I had an experience with my partner. We had an experience at the county animal shelter that was really eye-opening to me. And it was an experience where the shelter was full of animals, and I was trying to help a dog that we had called animal control about, and they wouldn't release the dog. The dog was in the stray hole, and they wouldn't release the dog to me for what they said would be 5 days, but it turned out to be longer because it's 5 business days. So we went to see the dog and tried to get it out, and they wouldn't release the dog to us. And eventually I went back after the end of the whole period, and where that shelter had been full, it seemed almost empty when I went to pick the dog up, and I realized what had happened, and that the animals that I'd seen just days before had been euthanized. And it was so stunning to me that that was the fate of animals in my community, I guess, that I just I started to become obsessed with it, and I learned as much as I could, as quickly as I could, and ultimately we started LifeLine. Really have always had the same mission, which was to end the euthanasia of healthy and treatable animals in animal shelters, and looked at what was happening in our city of Atlanta, and tried to provide resources that seemed to be missing. It started out just letting people know that the county shelters existed. I lived maybe within a couple of miles of the one that we visited, and didn't even know it was there until I had a need to call animal services. And so started out just trying to publicize those animal shelters. Started a website called atlantapets.org, where we could post photos of animals in shelters to try and get them adopted. In our neighboring county, Fulton County, which keeps the city of Atlanta, the shelter wasn't even open to the public. And euthanasia rates were astounding then. They were 85% of the animals that entered shelters in Atlanta died there. So over time, it was just a process of what's wrong here, what's missing in this equation. We started spay neuter clinics, rehab program for dogs, particularly dogs in rescue groups, and just grew from there. After the clinics, what we realized ultimately was missing was the will to make it different. LifeLine had been around for about 10 years. We'd seen our euthanasia rates drop to around 50%, but was still pretty awful, and bid on and received contracts for our 2 county shelters in Fulton and DeKalb County. So we run those 2 shelters. We still have our clinics. We also have a full service clinic now, Pets for Life program. And in Fulton County, where we run the shelter, we also provide field services there. So grew a lot from my little sort of side business. I stopped practicing law probably around 2007, and have done this full time ever since.
Thank you so much. So I just want to mention, if you are here with us tonight, please tell us who you are and where you're from in the chat. We have Antonia from Mexico City, Patricia from Burbank, California, Chris from Kansas City, Anne from Melbourne. So we've got so far 3 different nations, 2 continents, just from Kanab. It looks like we have LifeLine. We have some LifeLine folks here. Chris from Denver. So let us know who you are and where you're from, and we're really glad to have you here. And comments and questions are welcome in the chat and on the Q&A. I want to turn now to sort of a couple of, I want to get right to it. So when you think about the work that you've done in animal welfare, what do you want to be your legacy? Like on the day you say, I've done what I've come to do, what do you want to say that you have done? Like what is most important for you to be remembered as having accomplished?
Wow, that's a simple question. Kristen, I mean, I feel like that all of us are partners in this, that when we get to a place where we've all worked to transform what animal services are. And, this last year has, for me, really crystallized what that transformation needs to be. We started out wanting to ensure the lives of all the animals that entered the shelter. And I think that, we're very close to that. here in Atlanta, in Rochester, the shelters that you manage, Kristen. And I think that we're close to getting there nationally. But my concern, I guess, the question I've always asked is, we started LifeLine to solve the shelter problem, but what's the problem that the shelters are supposed to solve? So we figure out what the problem is we're solving for and find some real solutions for animals who are at risk. And over the last year and a half, I'm convinced that the answer to the solution to those problems are within our community and not necessarily in the shelter. So if shelters, if we can get to the point where we don't have any qualifiers in front of shelters, we're not calling them kill or no kill or any of that, but they actually serve the purpose of being a temporary place for animals that truly need help and can't get it anywhere else before they're healed and can move on. I think that and that our work is really in the community where animals and people live, then that'd be a cool legacy.
I like that answer. I feel like if I just give some time to my colleagues, we get some great responses. So I like to stay out of the way for the most part. But I agree. I'd like to be remembered for helping with bringing this movement forward to a larger audience of animal welfare organizations and community members, engaging the community in a different way than ever before. There's a lot of incremental changes that I've made over the years that I've left a mark here in my community. But I think with the work we're doing now, like Rebecca said, is it's kind of it's take it to a next level or several levels higher, in that it's not just Atlanta that's changing, or Tucson that's changing, or Austin that's changing, or Rochester that's changing, right? It's all of those communities and all the ones in between, and folks as far away as Melbourne and Australia. So I think that's exciting, and that's cool. That's I want to be part of that. So that's why I'm here.
So I want to ask you, I was listening, we have these calls every Friday for leadership, and we have hundreds of people join, and we invited Steve Feldman from Havre to talk about housing, and he was talking about something like 30% of housing is accessible, and that 70% is not accessible to pet owners. It's not pet welcoming, and that number is getting worse. And even housing that is pet welcoming, it's this like tiny fraction that will allow big dogs. And I got really emotional. Like, I think it was the closest I've been to crying in a year, because I thought, we're doing all this work, but we're up against these systems that may make that work impossible. And I want to ask you both, like, do you have that kind of just pain or worry that maybe because we're up against these Goliath systems of power, we're not going to be successful?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think so, but I feel like, I don't know if I'm overly optimistic. I've said that a few times. You probably heard me say that, but well, I feel like we're a system. Right. And particularly, I'm part of a government system. Rebecca has contracts for some government functions. So we're tied to some of the systems. So I think that it's about, like, what can we do? We're supporting the work of our industry. We're trying to engage the community, but I'm also trying to work internally to, with our systems to see how we can change the systems. So I don't approach it as being like, that's a big thing that we can't do. I view it as like, our system is going to try and move that system or those systems to change too. And, so who are the partners that we can collaborate with and have the dialogue start moving in the direction to solve these issues together.
I think that's a good answer. I mean, the challenges are immense. And when we start adding humans to our focus, I think particularly at LifeLine, we focused so much on saving lives, and not to the exclusion of humans, but we have an extensive outreach program, Pets for Life program, where we're working in the community with animals that will probably never enter the shelter system, hopefully, and with a community that doesn't really utilize the sheltering system that much. So bringing those functions together, I don't think we have to exclude animals from the equation to be able to help humans, but we need to stop excluding humans. So if we keep those two ends of the leash, I guess, together, and work at it from that perspective, I don't know that we are going to have to solve systemic poverty and racism and housing to be able to help animals who are at risk in these communities. I mean, even if there are housing issues for humans, there's still pets present. So perhaps I don't have as broad of a view as you're taking right now, Kristen. But I think Chris is right about this. If we work to shift the way our system is working, and we make that more community centric, there'll be some ripple effects of that as well. So I don't. It's like we're not going to be able to end COVID via animal welfare either, but we can have some real successes and do good work.
The other day we were talking, and you're both on the managing executive committee of the Haas project, and we were talking about empowering the public to implement the Haas elements, to help pets get rehomed, to help get lost pets home, to help people get resources to keep their pets. And the question we posed was sort of, do we just make this open? Anyone can do these. And I was really surprised that you all and several of the people, the whole group really said, we're really worried about just opening this up because the unintended consequences could be that the people who are helping could discriminate further. Like they could actually discriminate against people and make the problem worse. And I was hoping you could both talk a little bit about that, because it seems like a real conundrum. We need more helpers, but we can't have those helpers reifying and recreating the problems that got us here in the first place.
I don't know that I would actually characterize it like that. I think that, we're looking at this in the context of who our audience is, and excited that there are people here from other countries, but by and large, we're still preaching to the choir, and that audience is not necessarily let me use a different example. I think that when working with rescue groups, it's not always apparent that what our goal, which is to get the animals out of the shelter alive, is necessarily aligned with the goals of the rescue group. And that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong or right about it. It's just we've got a certain mission, and we have a certain responsibility. So I don't know that just if we just take the exact same tools and shift them towards the community, if that's what's going to work. I think we're going to have to create some new platforms, and so that it'll be more of a gradual process. When COVID hit and the community showed up in droves to foster and adopt, I think we were all just amazed by that, and we're hoping, and in some ways it has continued for us, but we are starting to see, the animals are starting to come back, shelters are starting to fill up again. And uh, I don't know that necessarily people have moved on, but there's not the same sense of urgency for people to step in and help. And I think that, you know, we still have some work to do to build those partnerships in the community. So if we're just taking the tools that we're trying to develop and asking others to run with it, I mean, there are going to be some unintended consequences with that.
Yeah, I just add to that I think, I think as we establish new messaging and reinforce that messaging in our communities, that we're building more depth in our communities for their willingness or interest in being part of these community-based solutions. And so I don't know. We can't ever guard against like all unintended consequences or someone, imposing some bias on the tools that we put out there. But I think, again, as we're messaging that here's the reasons why, getting animals out of the shelter or keeping animals in homes are better, that's going to take root and it's going to resonate with people that really makes sense. It's kind of just simple change in, a perspective or dogma that we're trying to, we're only on the, I don't know if I want to mix metaphors too much, but we're on the 10-yard line or something like that. So we've got a ways to go with what we're doing and making it every day part of every animal services organization everywhere. So the community is going to be behind us on that.
Well, yeah, I appreciate both of your responses. And I think what I want to get to and understand more is we have a deep history of discriminatory practices in animal welfare. And in fact, so much of the movement has been about taking animals away from people and taking them out of their homes and communities. And so we've inherited a legacy that that legacy is going to take some heavy lifting to change. How do we in this moment, and you are both leading high functioning organizations, but how do we fight against that history and that legacy we've inherited, where folks working in the movement who have the best intentions for animals truly don't believe that many or most people should be allowed to own them? What do you think our responsibility as animal welfare leaders is in that regard today?
Well, I think as much as we can, we need to, again, back to messaging to reinforce that, like, no one should be deprived of, the right to have an animal or that bond or that relationship. That's part of what we're doing at Animal Services in Rochester, but part of Haas, is obviously about that human animal bond. And so I think, that we're genuine and intentional in using those words and that message, that this is like a core, a fundamental human relationship or a human need. That's Kiva shaking. That right, so that we're not. That's front and center in everything that we do, and that then drives the decisions that we're making locally and regionally and nationally and beyond. So that's my take on it, is that it's through consistent and continuous messaging about why that's important.
And we need a bigger choir, so if we're just talking to ourselves, then we're not reaching the community that we are a part of. And honestly, a lot is going to have to change. Our organizations are going to have to change. It is not lost on me, and it's something that we are having to contend with, that we've this is an industry from the nonprofit side that's really has profited off. Profit is maybe not the right word, but has sustained itself by villainizing part of the community and by basically taking animals out of poor communities, which are in the Atlanta area are also Black communities, and trying to adopt them to white communities. And that is, it's not a model that works. It's not a model that's fair. It's not a model that's sustainable, and it has excluded an awful lot of people from the process. So, and our organizations need to change in the way they're made up, and who has a voice, who has agency within the organization, and how much leverage does the community have on what our services are. So, we're kind of faced with a little bit of a dilemma, is that, if we in our messaging, we do our messaging all towards the community and the human animal bond, are we going to lose those donors that's not really it's not that they don't believe in the human animal bond, but they believe that certainly if you can't afford a pet, you shouldn't have one, and that they want to see fluffy faces, and not necessarily what we're doing in terms of working within our community. So it's an issue that our industry is going to have to come to terms with, and we're going to have to change. We're going to have to change what we look like and how we operate and how our organizations function, or we're always going to be preaching to the choir. And we're always going to, it's not just because you're into animal welfare, that's not the only people that had pets. 67% of households have pets, and we have a pretty small minority of those people are working in our field or volunteering in our field. So, pets are kind of universal. And why we have gotten this sort of just narrow slice of it, when what we're really trying to do is support that bond, then we've done something wrong. We've gone astray somewhere, no pun intended. But from what is really important about that human-animal bond. So.
Right, and we're sending those messages. We're sending our newsletters and our annual appeals to the same people, the same demographics over and over again, and we're not reaching our community that we're serving. So I mean, that is part of what the evolution, I think, is about, is taking a hard look at ourselves, what we've done right and what we've done wrong, and learning from it. And so it's reaching out into the community in different ways, and that doesn't mean we ignore the supporters who love animals, but we have to find a way to find the folks that don't know that they could be a supporter, don't know that they could be a volunteer, or that there's an employment opportunity a couple blocks from where they live.
I want to take just a minute to welcome Pam from Southern California, Susie from Bakersfield. We have Audrey at LifeLine, June in Tennessee, Karen in New Hampshire, and so many other folks on the call. Hi, Elkie from San Diego. And someone said, so thankful euthanasia numbers have dropped dramatically in Atlanta, and medical help is being provided to pets from underprivileged families. Clinics being provided by LifeLine is a lifeline for these animals. So your work is appreciated, and I'm cognizant that there could be 50 or more people on this call today who are thinking about stepping up a leadership level. And unfortunately, the way we've built the animal welfare system, there's so many barriers to emerging as leaders. I feel like so many of us who did it was kind of accidental. And what do you think that young people, and I don't necessarily mean young by age, but young professionally, people coming into this movement who we desperately need to be leaders, What do you think is important for them to know, and what should they be doing now to get ready and take charge and lead this movement in a different direction?
I think some of the things that are helpful to identify are the skill sets that are important, more so than a particular field of study or coming from a particular discipline. So things like, change management, critical thinking, listening, being able to step aside and let others lead, service leadership, emotional intelligence. I think those are areas to kind of, hone, read, study, continuing education type. But if you're interested in working with people and animals, there, that's the burgeoning field here. So there you go.
That's a tough question. What advice to someone just entering the field? This is an interesting journey. Animal welfare is an interesting journey, and it's one that I think people become passionate about it, and I know I have, and even though I didn't start out that way, I became driven by the idea that things really should be different. Not just that they could be, but they really should be. That the change was really necessary, and it meant something to me that this looked like a problem that could be solved. That kind of goes back to your first question. We really, there are so many things out there that we are going to make incremental progress on. But killing animals for space and shelters is something that can be solved and can be stopped. It's a practice that we don't have to continue. So I think that it's a historical moment, I think, for animal welfare, and so that it's really exciting to be a part of that. If I look back at myself, I would, when I first got into it, I might have told myself to get some coping skills, like learn to take care of myself a little bit better, because this is a really can be a very consuming field. I think it is one of the things that I kind of regret maybe as a leader is that I think the organization we were described today by someone is that get it done attitude. And while that's really true, I think that there have been a lot of people involved in LifeLine that it was really difficult to achieve any balance. And so I'd like to have an environment where that's more honored, that you don't, that it's not this badge of honor that you work 14 and 15 hours a day, 7 days a week, and saving lives. That I think that hasn't always served to benefit the team or really the animals. So yeah, practice some self-care, get some self-care skills before you lose the ability to do that, I think. Also, I think it's important for us to start looking at the people who are involved in our organizations and helping to identify what their superpowers are and what they can bring to the table, because I think maybe we've been narrow in our focus, and there are a lot of people that have a lot to offer, and I think we could be more adept at harvesting those resources.
Rebecca, do you think you could ethically recommend someone become a shelter director? Like, I think you and I had this conversation where I was like, I don't know if I could recommend to someone that I like or care about that they become a director in most shelters because it's so brutal.
It is a really tough job to be in that leadership position, in part because you have an enormous amount of responsibility. There's so much that's out of your control, and there is this seems to be getting worse, not better. There's increasingly a public that is just angry, period, and we often become a target of that. And you know, mistakes that happen in sheltering can be catastrophic. You know, so it makes it a really hard job, and sometimes it's catastrophic at a level that, you know, you're not particularly engaged in. So the depth of your responsibility goes really deep in an organization, and you know, someone can tie up a dog wrong or leave a cage unlatched or something like that, and you know, it can be a catastrophic thing. And the animals themselves you have to gain some humility, because no matter what you do or how far you go, somebody's going to impale themselves on that chain link. You know, it's just so it can be really a really difficult job. But I think, and I would hope that our directors agree, it can be really rewarding at the end of the day. I mean, I've never regretted. Of course, I defended criminals, so there's that. But I've never regretted making this career choice, and I've not regretted even, you know, we didn't have to take over county animal control facilities, but I've not regretted that either. And I'm very grateful for the leadership we have in our county shelters that have facilitated that success.
Chris, what do you think is, of the past year and a half? I know, you know, I've been through days with you that have been really, really rough. I mean, you have dealt with you've had to have tremendous fortitude in the face of adversity, and you have survived it. Can you talk a little bit about, like, what has we use the word triumph, but what, if anything, what has triumph felt to you in this past year and a half?
So I think, you know, the sort of the struggle and that dichotomy of of trials and triumphs is that on a daily basis, I feel like there's so many powerful, successful, you know, impactful changes and activities going on. And kind of in the backdrop, there could be, you know, a distraction of, you know, why did you do this? Why aren't you doing this? What, you know, like misunderstandings or unmet expectations or something. So that's been kind of the weird, almost surreal nature of this period for me, is on the one hand, being so motivated and inspired by the work, not just here in Rochester, but that we're involved with on this national or international stage, and having, you know, folks berate my organization or me in particular for something that's largely based on, you know, a lack of communication or a misunderstanding or something like that. But I mean, the triumphs range, pardon me, from things like, you know, finding a foreign body in a dog that came in with a broken limb, because we were able to get an X-ray machine here at the shelter like a year and a half ago. Something we didn't have before that, but we looked at the dog's leg and just happened to get a little bit of its abdomen, and so we saw this thing, and it was this large threaded metal plug that was in the dog's abdomen. We were able to get that out of the dog. And that's a success, you know. The the dog that was away from its owner for 8 years, that we were able to reunite with the owner's son, who was like a kid at the time the dog went missing and is now like an adult because of a microchip. And it could be the dog that went missing 10 minutes ago that's happening on a daily basis. So I mean, like there's this whole range of these like extreme cases, and then like the really just everyday ones where, you know, someone's found an animal and we connect the finder with the owner right down the street and the dog goes home. You know, those are kind of things that, you know, maybe were happening before, but no one was really talking about it. And now it's an everyday occurrence. So, I mean, those are the things I want my staff to share with me. I want us to celebrate them. I want us to focus on those things and really dilute the, you know, so that background noise of negativity and you know, not ignore it, because obviously there's work I need to do in my community with communications and you know, spreading the message better about what it is we're actually doing. But I mean, that's kind of what I've done to kind of keep focused on the positives is not ignore the negative, but let's keep sharing what we are doing. And those are the messages. Those are reinforcing the truth of what we're actually doing. And then we'll try and repair relationships along the way. Did I answer your question though?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things I hope that of the people on this call tonight, my goal is that they will hear from you two. You're not just leaders, you're thought leaders, and you also inspire so many people. And that being in that role, I feel like there's some real greatness about it. And I wonder from the two of you, do you see yourself as mentors? Like, do you see yourself as not just saving lives, not just creating life-saving communities and ending the needless euthanasia of animals, but do you see yourself kind of setting the stage for the people that will come after you to do the next iteration of work? And I realize that I'm a little stuck on this, but it's important because we do face a national shortage of directors. We face a national shortage of veterinarians, and more we face a shortage of people really wanting to enter all levels of this work. How are you kind of facing that and kind of building your own little cohort army around you to keep going and keep creating change?
I'm not sure how I see myself in that picture, but I am very grateful. I think that at LifeLine we have a really deep bench, and I just feel like we're incredibly lucky. I mean, I think that, you know, like Chris is saying, you have to look for those bright spots. You have to be able to celebrate some of those smaller victories to keep going, because we do face a lot of just crazy stuff. I mean, crazy stuff. You can't make that stuff up is our tagline. We say it a little differently, but I think that you know, part of being a leader is trying to pull that out of the people around you as well. And I'm just really grateful for the team that we have. And I think that, you know, some of them came to us, you know, that just, you know, apply for a job as, you know, maybe an adoption counselor or volunteer coordinator or something like that. But then have stayed and grown and learned about it. It was so meaningful to me to see that our foster supervisor, manager, maybe, I forget the titles, but that Haas gave her a kind of a work group award. I don't exactly remember. Kristen, you might know that the work groups are highlighting different members for their contribution, and that was so meaningful to me, because I think that's one of the things that Haas has given us, and that really kind of you had asked us earlier about silver linings. A silver lining of the pandemic is that our I'm so blessed with the team that we have, and I realize they're not alone. And so we're able to, one of the things that we've been able to do through Zoom and webinars and work groups and the conversations and stuff is to have that connection across the country uh, with people. I mean, I consider Chris a friend, and I don't know that we've ever actually met in person, but I feel like we know each other and we're on the same path. So I think that, you know, this event that we're all still in the midst of has given us some solidarity that we didn't have before. And I'm not worried about the future of our industry. Maybe now I'm not sharing any of these new leaders with anybody. They can't leave LifeLine. That's not allowed. Um, but I see a lot of promise, and there are some amazing things happening. Really, that and then I think Haas has been a big part of that. Not Haas necessarily the ideas or anything, but just the structure of bringing all these people together and thinking about it. You mentioned thought leadership, and I think that's so desperately what our field needs. And I think it's there, and I get to see it every day in action with Chris and with you and the 78 people who are watching this webinar.
Yeah, so we're creating, Kristen, and you and Haas are creating a platform that's gonna only help, you know, with those future leaders. And so, you know, our teams around us are you know, going to benefit from that, and the people that are coming up behind us it'll be part of the onboarding. You know, it's part of their, you know, their training and development is going to be Hassen it.
Do you think that I sort of come to the point where I think that what we can do as leaders is teach people how to fight better in animal welfare. Because when I came into this field, I noticed that the fighting was intensely personal. We were unable to have critical conversations. We were unable to debate. And I think that's one of the things that's really changed this last year and a half, that we're able to maybe fundamentally disagree about how to operate an animal shelter or what is the best thing to happen for animals. But we're no longer using that as a way to divide ourselves as humans. Do you see more of that happening in the future? And do you think that's important, that we do learn how to disagree in a way, but still collaborate?
I do. And, you know, and that's kind of, not to bring the conversation back to the previous question, but I mean, that was part of my approach to coming through some of the negativity and the adversity is to, you know, to try and create space for you know, common ground, and use that to move forward and not focus on the things that are dividing us. So I mean, there's so much that we all do agree on, and so put those little you know, differences in operations or differences in terminology aside for the bigger greater good movement. That wasn't a plug for a foundation, but
I mean, I think that we have more. We are realizing as a movement that we have more in common than we thought, and that there are some fundamental things that we agree on. I don't think there's anybody out there that that feels that or thinks or believes at this point that euthanasia is a desirable solution for lack of space or resource.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was always true or if that was just our legacy, but I think that there is a consensus that's not what we want to do. And there is I think a consensus that it's possible not to do that. And I think when I started in this field, there were people that believed that that was not true. I don't hear this as often, and I hope not to hear it ever anymore, but there's not enough homes. language. They're just, there are too many animals. There are not enough homes. That's not true. I mean, it's just not true. Mathematically, that just is not true. So I think that we are willing to come together and work towards some common solutions that we can pretty much agree on. The language issue, the kill, no kill, euthanasia, what words to use issue, I think is still very divisive. And I think it's just it will take time for us to work through that. I tried to be more, I'm a person who uses the word kill, and I've tried to be more conscious about that because of people that I've talked to through the Haas work groups, and understanding how, regardless of how I feel about it, they're hurt by that language. And if we can be on the same page, that euthanasia is not a population management tool. If we can get on that same page together, then I don't have to hurt them by using that language. So, but it's going to take a little more mindful speech on my part to be able to stop saying that. But I don't think we need, and just as I don't think we need to hold on to that language quite as tightly as we once did either. I think that it perhaps has gotten past its usefulness for our movement.
So this brings us to another, I think, really critical issue of this moment, which is that over the past year and a half, we have gotten out of our isolationist US-centric animal welfare box. And I think the movement has been remarkable in that it has just refused to see outside of the US, even to our neighbors to the north and south in Canada and Mexico. And when we talk about life saving, when we talk about the number of animals dying, it's like we're not even considering outside of the US. And today we're sitting here with, I think we're up to 4 or 5 countries on this call, and people from all over the world are learning about human animal support services. They're wanting to become involved with community centered sheltering. What does the future look like? Like, what do you see in 10 years? Do we have a more international approach to animal welfare than we do today?
Well, that would be really cool. I'd like to have a more inclusive approach in our city. So it's I guess I don't know enough about it to make intelligent comments on it. I know that some countries don't have the issues that we have, and some countries have much more horrific things going on. So I don't know if it's too utopian to say, well, I hope we can all come together and honor the human-animal bond because it's part of our evolutionary heritage, and it's all going to be great. But I don't know. I think that we will be very fortunate in 10 years if we have a less homogenous looking staff and a less homogenous looking movement. And we would be lucky in our shelters if we had a less homogenous looking dog population as well.
Yeah, I mean, Chris, I want to let you answer, but I also want to add, in the US, we have the highest per capita human incarceration rate and the highest per capita animal impoundment rate. And so I think there's a lot to be learned from how other countries are handling animal population management. So it's I think that it's something we could really learn from. So Chris, what are your thoughts?
You stole my answer. So I was going to say that I thought, thanks a lot. So no, I was going to say that I thought that, but being more inclusive and opening up, the channels of communication, welcoming diverse perspectives on it, so it's not like a one-way street here of us sharing our knowledge and programs and ideas. I think there's a lot to be learned from what's working you know, I mean, so like what you were doing, Kristen, in Tucson with fostering, you know, we were learning about that pre-pandemic. So like, you know, it wasn't novel that like, let's do some fostering, right? But I mean, you know, looking at things about how, you know, animals are being housed, group housing in other countries, and, you know, what's working, what's not working, you know, and like Rebecca said, some countries have different challenges than we have, and so, you know, maybe those are things that we don't have to deal with now, or we'll have to deal with in the future. But I think it's about bringing those diverse perspectives and ideas into the fold.
Well, I know we're getting towards the end of the time, and I want to thank everyone for being here, and also say, Rebecca, you've been a hero of mine for many years now, and Chris, I got to know and deeply respect you through this last year and a half. And what I really appreciate about both of you is just how giving you are of time and knowledge and expertise. There's no school of animal sheltering yet. So we have to help each other, and your work and contributions to this movement are hugely important. And I know I speak for so many folks, and I say we're grateful. I want to just leave on with one last question, which is what is your prediction for 10 years from now? What is going to look different in 10 years when it comes to animal welfare?
Well, I like
30 seconds.
30 seconds. Okay. I think we're gonna have more of the Community Animal Resource Center, a la Dr. Sarah Pisano, and our field services are going to be largely supportive services, addressing root causes of problems, and less punitive. And we're going to be supporting community members in more mutual aid kind of formats.
I like that. I would like to see the same thing. I would really like, and I would like a lot of these controversies to be over. Like I said, I want all the qualifiers on shelters to be gone, and that the shelter has a specific purpose, and that it's a good purpose, and that, you know, we have found and are implementing solutions in partnership with different stakeholders in our community, and it is actually solving problems that put animals at risk. So I'm not sure how we're going to get there, but I think we've made a good start.
Thank you both so much. We are at time. Thanks everyone for joining us. Remember to go to humananimalsupportservices.org. You can see the entire calendar of events. We have 4 to 5 opportunities to engage with folks almost as cool as Chris and Rebecca every week. So please join us. Anyone can be part of Human Animal Support Services. It is a collaborative of more than 1,000 animal welfare professionals and folks from all over in many different movements. So thanks for being here tonight. We'll be here every 2 weeks with a series of these presentations with some of our great leaders of animal welfare. Have a great night, everybody, and thanks again for coming.